Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. So we're gonna make this today. Let's get into it. So this particular project, I am going to use my favorite yarn in the whole world to make wearable, warm winter stuff. Is the Charisma by Loops and Threads. It's a bulky 5. This particular bulky 5 calls for an 8mm hook. I am going to be using a 7mm hook, and I have to use one of these old school ones, which are my favorite hooks to use for this particular yarn, because this allows a nice slide. I feel I have clover hooks and I love my clover hooks. However, they don't have, and I'll show you, I don't have a 7 handy, but this is a 6. It seems like the bigger the needle with these clovers, the shorter the shaft gets for some reason. So I needed a shaft, and this just has an ongoing shaft. So that's why I'm choosing to use the old school hooks. It's just a lot easier on my shoulders and my arms. This stuff is 100% acrylic, and it is machine washable in warm, gentle cycle and to dry on low. This particular color is Denim Heather. It's a navy blue with the flecks in it. It's just an absolute beautiful color. So that's what I'm going to use today. And the majority of the project is by measurement. So let's get into that. So first you need to measure your child's head. So you'll measure around the forehead, down behind the ears to the nape of the neck to get a measurement. A lot of kids' heads are between 19 and 20 inches, depending on the age of the child or what size their head was at birth. Now, I do have a granddaughter who should have that size of head, and her head is actually 22.5 inches. So she's got a big head. Some children do have a big head. So just make sure that you're measuring the head, because you're going to need to know what size to make this to fit the head and to fit the body. So you're going to have to measure the head, and that'll give you an idea of what width to make this. So this is what I did. I measured the head, and then I put 3 inches on either side, because this technically doesn't have sleeves. It just has a little bit coming off the shoulders, as you could see by the picture. This is just a poncho style, so there's technically no sleeves or shoulders or anything, but I did do 3 inches on the shoulders on either side. So if your daughter, son, whoever has a 19-inch head, you've got to at least add 6 more inches to that. So 25 inches is how long you need to make the first thing that we're making, if those are your measurements. So, and then you're going to need to measure from the neck down to however long you want this thing to be. So anyway, let's just get started on the ribbed part. We're going to make the ribbed, this doesn't come in cakes, by the way. I made it a cake. We're going to do the ribbed bottom to start for our length, and then we're going to do a pattern stitch if you choose to do it. It's a pretty nice pattern stitch, I think. It's called the Suzette stitch, and I'll show you. But first, let's make the little ribbed area on the bottom. So I want you to chain 7 if you're using the same style of yarn in that. If you're using something that's a little smaller, you might want to chain 9 or 10. So that's my chain 7, and I'm going to do 6 single crochets back up because those are all the working chains that I have. Chain 1, turn your work. From here on, everything is going to be done in the back loops only, and that's how we get our ribbed look. So in the back loops, now you can turn it over if you want. You're only using the back loop. So there's 6 stitches, so this goes pretty fast, but you're going to build this to the length that you need, and I need 25 inches. So I'm just going to keep doing this exact same thing till this measures 25 inches. So that's the best part of these things, these videos, is you can make it any size that you want. So just remember that whatever size head your child has, or whoever you're making it for, you need about 3 inches on either side. So add 6 inches to that number. So I'll just keep doing this all in the back loops only, and you'll get your little, I know it's hard to see because it's such a dark color, but you can see your own work. You'll get this ribbed, which we carry all up the sides and everything too. So I will see you on the other side. So I have mine done, and it measures 25 inches, and it is 58 rows. So that's, my gauge is fairly loose. Yours might be different. Plus you may not be using the same yarn that I'm using. So, I mean, our numbers may not be the same, and that's perfectly fine because you can use whatever yarn you want because all this goes by measurement, so it doesn't matter. Mine is 25 inches long. That's as much as I need it to be. So I chained 1 for some reason. Don't chain 1. You don't have to chain 1 here. So now we're going to be working down this raw side. And we're just going to be adding some stitches because we need, here, come back down here. We need to have stitches to work into for later. So I'm going to tell you roughly where your holes are. So there's a hole. That's your first one that you're going to go into. And you're going to make a single crochet. And then every single one of these is going to be exactly the same. The holes, 2 holes, are going to be in the same spots, right there and right there. Then you're going to go between the next 2 bumps, and you're going to go right there and right there. All the way down, just so you have, I have 58 rows, so I should have 58 stitches when I'm done by just going into these 2 between each bump, because each bump is 2 rows, right? So you're gonna have to be able to put those 2 stitches in between there. So I'm going to chain 1, and I'm going to turn my work. So now we're going to start the Suzette stitch. So our ribbed section here, we did 6 stitches. The ribbed section is now going to run up vertically on either side. So we need 6 stitches over here and 6 stitches at the front to make our ribbed vertical. And then the rest of it's going to be the Suzette stitch. That's the one I chose. If you don't want to make the pattern stitch, that's perfectly fine. You don't have to. You've got your base now for what you need. So you can do whatever you prefer to do. So this one has to be starting in the back loops. So because we're doing the rib sections here and at the end, these first 6 stitches are done in the back loops. And they're always going to be in the back loops. Now the Suzette stitch is done in the full loop. So that's my 6th stitch in the back loop. So this is the area that the buttons are going to be on. Now the buttons are not working buttons. They don't undo. They're just there for the look of it. Aesthetics. So those are my 6 stitches done in the back loop. So now we jump into the Suzette stitch, and we'll do the Suzette stitch all the way over until we have 6 stitches left. So if you want to make your life easier, then just count 6 stitches. 2, 4, and 6, and stick a marker in there. 2, 4, 6, and I know that this is going to be my first back loop for my ribbed area, so I can do my Suzette stitch all the way up to there. So a Suzette stitch, easy peasy to do a Suzette stitch. We'll start in the very next stitch, and I want you to do a slip stitch. And in that same space, I want you to put a double crochet. That's it. That's the Suzette stitch. Skip 1 into the next stitch. And no, this will not make any, this won't make it smaller because we're putting 2 in here. So the skip 1 is already being used because 2 stitches go in here. It's okay to skip 1. It'll still be the same size, is what I'm trying to say. So anyway, slip stitch and then double crochet. Skip 1 into your next stitch, slip stitch, and double crochet. Skip 1, slip stitch, double crochet. So continue this all the way to your marker, and I'll meet you back there. So I'm all the way back over. I'm skipping 1 and doing my last Suzette stitch right before my marker. Now if you have a stitch before your marker because you have an uneven number, or you just, that's the way it worked out for your yarn and for your measurements, and that's okay, you can just skip it. There's a skip 1 in the middle anyway, so you can skip it if you have too many. So I don't know if you can see, I mean you can see your own, it's a wave pattern. And when it all comes together, it looks pretty neat. So I'm going to take my marker out. And this is where I'm going to do my 6 single crochets in my back loops for the ribbed section. So if you wanted to always keep this marker here, just so you know where your stitch begins, it's probably a good idea, just so you don't. I mean, in yarn like this with the flex, it's kind of hard to get, or it's easy to get lost. So you can chain 1 and turn your work, and then you're going to do the exact same thing. It's literally a 1 row of repeat. So from this side it looks really neat. So this will be, because we do back and front, this will be on either side. So now I'm going to show you where your stitches are, because they are kind of hard to find in this next row. But first let's start off with our 6 single crochets in the back loops. So now we get to where our stitches. So see this great big bump right here that you did, that you create that by doing your double crochet, and that's the big stitch. So I'm going to show you. That's the stitch you're going to get into, is the one right behind this big bump. The one next to it is our slip stitch, and that's going to be tight and hard to get into. So the one that's going to be our skip stitch. So the next one will be here, and you can see, so here's my 2 pieces for my stitch, and that's the big bump. So it's right behind that big bump, and that's the stitch you're going to get into to do your slip stitch and your double crochet. Skip 1, which will be that little stitch right in there, go to the next big stitch, slip stitch, double crochet. So those are the stitches you're going to get into. So now my next big bump, I'm just going to roll it over a little bit because it is kind of behind it, and grab my stitch. So prospectively, there's my stitch and there's the bump, so you can see how I'm behind it. So as long as you know that you're behind that back bump, you don't really need to worry about this small little stitch in between. You just know that you're automatically skipping it. So this does work out pretty quick, the size of the yarn and the size of the hook. And so measure your child from the neck down to however long you want this to be. You can go to his knees if you want. And mine, I measured just down past the crotch, and because I figured, you know, it's a nice bonfire sweater if they want to run around the yard or sit in front of the bonfire. It's not impeding his knees, it's just down on his upper thighs. And it was 20 inches for my one guy and 19 inches for my other guy. So, and they're 2-3 years old, so you just need to measure, so just so you know how long that this has to be before we meet back up, from the neck down to wherever you want it to stop. So once you have that measurement, you can just go ahead and just continue to do this 1 row repeat until you have your length, and I will see you right back. Well, not right back, it'll probably take you a while. I'll probably see you in a couple of days. It'll be 30 seconds on the video, but and then I will show you the other one that I'm making for my other little guy, because you can see the pattern better with that type of yarn. It's completely different yarn. It's a bulky 5, but it's not made out of the same stuff, so it's not as bulky. And I'm using a 6mm with that, so it's completely different sizes. But I thought I would do the video with the bulky, like this type, because this is going to be warmer. The other one's more of a fall yarn. So now you can see the big bumps are on the other side, so that's how it's going to play out. There's big bumps on one side, big bumps on, well, both sides. It's going to end up working out too. And then I'm just about over at my 6 single crochets. I've got one more back bump. I've got one more bump I got to get into. Well, not the bump, but the stitch behind it. And now I have my 6 single crochets. So you just got to remember that it's in the back loops, so we can make the ribbed vertical ribs. There. So that's our pattern. So do it to whatever length that you need it done to, and I will see you right back here. So this is my one piece for my tunic style piece that I was working on. I have to make 2 of these. So these are going to my grandsons, which are 2 and 3 years old currently. They're probably going to get them for fall next year, 2023. So then they're going to be 3 and 4. This one is for my oldest one. So I got his mom to do a measurement, and I needed from his neck down to just below his crotch area, because I want it to be a long tunic. 20 inches for him. So I actually did this one turned out to be 19 and a half inches. I ended up doing 42 rows this way, all the way up. So if that gives you an indication, and that is with the bulky 5, the Charisma bulky 5. So that's what we have. So now we have to make part number 2 the exact same size. So, and then when we come back, we're going to put the 2 pieces together. We're going to sew even along the ribbed area. We're going to sew until we have a neck hole, the 2 ends together. And then once we have our neck hole, we can start building off of that to make our turtleneck part of the tunic. So we have to do another one of these. This is a long project. Most clothing projects are longer projects. So I'll meet you back when you've got your second panel done, and we'll start sewing it all together. Hi guys, so I am back. Sorry, my furnace is on. I am back, and I've got both my my ends that I need. So I just want to weave in before I get started. The 2, you can't see the other side, but there's in the 2 ends that I need to weave. And then we'll get sewing the neck up and then making the turtleneck, and then this adding the buttons. So I will, while we're hiding the ends here, I will put the buttons on the screen where I got them. I got them on Amazon. They are large buttons, and I love them. So I'm going to put those on the screen so you know where to get some from. So I ended up doing altogether 42 rows for each panel in the Charisma bulky 5 with my 7mm. If I take my little measuring device and I measure, say, at 9 inches, 9 and 9 is 18, right? You can decide how wide you want the opening, but I think that's going to give me a larger size than just going 9 and 9 is 18 inches. I don't think that's how it works. But if they end up with a big turtleneck, that's kind of exactly what you want. You don't want something that's constrictive on a little fella, because I don't know what you made your piece out of. I don't know what pattern stitch you use, so I don't know how to tell you to count. So I would just go by measurement. And I'm just going to do a simple whip stitch. Oh, I got this upside down and backward. Oh, no, I don't. So I'm going to come in 6 bumps over. I'm going to make a little knot here at the beginning just because I'm pretty anal. I'd like to mention that this has to be turned right side in. Now, as far as the pattern, it doesn't really matter because this pattern can be used front to back. So we're going to sew and then turn it right side around. But I'm sure you already knew that. I'm assuming everybody knows how to sew. I suck at sewing. So I'm right at my marker. I'm going to go back into the same stitch and I'm going to make a knot. Now keep in mind, I'm going to be reattaching and putting a turtleneck on this thing. So I'm tying a knot and then I'm going to weave across to start sewing over there. So try to just keep your weave on this side. This is a scary Halloween head, but it's 19 inches, so. It's gonna be pulled tight. Oh yeah. And see, this will stretch too. Yarn stretches unless it's cotton. But yeah, that fits pretty good for a 19-inch head. So there you go. My scary little Halloween head. So I'm right on the very last stitch. And I think I will use my straggler. Remember I said, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do with my straggler. I'm going to use this to make my knot. It's really soft. I don't think anyone's going to feel it. And then I'm going to weave kind of down where I just sewed. So the buttons make the armholes. They're not really going to be working buttons. They're just going to be decorative buttons, so it will always kind of be held together. So the buttons, these get put together. The buttons are going to go through both pieces, but they're not going to be ones you can undo and do back up. They're just going to be there to hold that together. So this is your armhole. So that's the plan, Stan. So I'm going to turn this right side in now that I've got everything sewn together. So I can start my turtleneck. So my buttons won't be here till tomorrow, but I can start the turtleneck part. So we did a Suzette stitch, so we have to, this is all raw. So we're kind of just gonna jab our hook in wherever we can get it in there, and we're gonna make some space. So put a slip knot on your hook and reattach, preferably in a corner here. So reattach with a single crochet, but we're going to be doing this in double crochet. So I want you to put a double crochet in that same space. You're going to stick your hook in wherever you can get it and do one double crochet around the entire space. So wherever you can feel an opening. There's not going to be any right or wrong numbers here. Just try not to make them far apart. And I'm still going in behind my bump into that stitch behind the bump. So if that helps at all. So 19 and 19. So I'm going to make sure my straggler stays out so I can tuck it away. So I'm going to slip stitch and chain 2. So we're going to do front post, back post, double crochet all the way around, and there's no increasing or any decreasing or anything else unless you feel the need to do an increase to have a great big sloppy turtleneck. Then that's completely up to you. I am not. I'm just going to do front post, back post, double crochet. So I'm going to start with the front post. I'm going to put these are posts, these ones that we did from the previous row, and I'm going to put that on my hook. And then I'm going to yarn over and I'm going to finish my double crochet. And then we go to our next post. I wonder if I can come in anymore. And then we go to our next post, and we're going to yarn over because we're doing double crochets, and we're going to come in through the back. So back post is coming in through the back and going back out that next hole and putting the post on your hook at the back of your work. And then yarning over, pulling through, and finishing your double crochet. So alternating front post, back post, and that is all we're going to do for the turtleneck. So try to keep it loose if you're a tight crocheter. Maybe go up a hook size for this. I am a loose crocheter, so I'm just going to keep using my number 7. So if you got to put your work down and you're not quite sure where you left off, whether it's front post or back post, these front posts will have this big gobby stuff at the front. The back post will have a bar across it like that, so you'll know whether that's a back post or a big gobby front post. Once you pull the work apart, you have to pull the work apart to see it, but I know it's dark yarn, you're probably struggling to see what I'm doing. I'll turn my light up during editing, so it's not going to look too bad. Anyway, continue. And I would say, without measuring your child's face, but again, it's clothing, so you're going to have to do a measurement. I don't have my grandson's face here to measure, but the last balaclava type turtleneck thing that I did, I made sure that it was about 4 inches. I figured that was pretty good if they wanted to roll it up and not plug their nose, but you know, cover their face if it gets to be a breezy fall day and their face is cold or something. So this is a fall tunic. This isn't a winter tunic, even though it's pretty chunky, but some of our fall days up here in Canada can sometimes feel like some people's winters. So this is why we make stuff like this. So once you come all the way back around, don't forget to slip stitch to the top of that first chain and chain 2 and then begin again. So you're putting front loop on front loop, back loop on back loop. So I had this, I know, spooky. So I had this laying, or standing up, looking at me, but, so the neck is, this is under the chin. Right there, so where the Suzette stitch stops, is under the chin of the 19-inch foam head. So it will just cover the nose portion of the child. So you can just roll it down for a regular turtleneck. I am done mine. That's as far as I'm going because I don't need to go any further. And that 3-ounce roll, I've got a little bit left. So I've got, you know, maybe 1.5 ounces or whatever. If I roll that, it's probably only 1.5 ounces. I don't have a scale, so I just guess. So, there's a couple of things you got to weave in. This that you just fastened off of, and then this that you started with originally. So, I got my buttons today. Super excited about these buttons. So, when I was designing this thing, these are the buttons that I had in mind, and I didn't even know if these buttons existed. And they do. I found them. I found a whole pile of them. So, I got this whole box. I'm just going to cover my address, but I got this whole box from Amazon, full of these great big 60mm buttons. They had 50mm and 60mm. So I got the biggest ones that you can buy. So 60mm, and they were so dirt cheap. They're like, how many did I get? 30 for like $24. So I mean, if you go to Michael's, number one, you can't find 60mm. You find 50mm, and they're like $6 a button. So it's a little ridiculous, but I mean, that's Canada. Wherever you are, it might be different. So these are the buttons. So I've got the one side sewn on, and it left me a 7-inch armhole for the little guy. And I kind of just left it tunic style, right? So I just left the slit at the bottom too. So these are sewn through and through, like all the way to the back. You can't open them, but you can't separate it either. So there's no using the buttons to put it on and off. You have to pull it over your head. So I just grabbed whatever blue yarn that I had, and I wasn't really concerned on whether I was all matchy, but that's completely up to you. So let's sew on the other side. So there's not a whole lot of room on my table, but you just gotta make sure that this everywhere is completely together the way it should be. So I'll grab some yarn, and I sewed and then I tied. So this is the bottom. So I completely avoid this ribbed part. And then these ribs up here, I went up 2 ribs. And I put a button. And then I skipped 2 ribs and I put a button. And then I skipped 2 ribs and I put a button. So that's how my buttons went. But when you're doing this, just make sure that you have the same size armhole. And I do not. So I just kind of got to wiggle my buttons down a little bit here. And that gives me 7 inches. So you just got to find the right groovy spots. So just make sure there's 2 bars in between. And then whatever size of armhole you choose to leave, just make sure it matches on both sides. I left obviously 7 inches, so but you can do whatever you want. I mean, this has all been done by measurement by whoever you're making it for. So I'm just going to start with the one at the top, just to make sure I don't lose that 7 inches. So I didn't pull all the way through, obviously, because I'm going to use some of this at the back to tie it after I've done sewing it, and I chose to do an X pattern on my holes, and I went back and forth 2 or 3 times to make it thick, but I've only got just 4-weight yarn. So once you've gone back and forth as many times as you're going to, then I just flipped it Trying to kind of just keep everything together. And then I tied tightly, so make sure you're pulling that button nice and tight. And I did 3 knots. You can do whatever you want. Considering I'm not a sewer, I probably wouldn't take my advice. And then I just went in between and snipped it off. There we go. All done. It was a big project, guys. I appreciate you doing it with me. That's fabulous. Oh, my buttons actually match, too. And then lots of room in here for a little guy to grow. Oh my god. Fuzzies. There we have it. Thanks for joining me, guys. I hope you like this. I'll see you in the next video.